And now, I'm very pleased to introduce my dear colleagues, which are here, I see them. Alejandra, Sánchez, Inzunza from Dromómanos. Also, we have Siddharth Varadarajan, founding editor of The Wire in India. And Konstantinos Poulis, chief editor of the Press Project. So I think what we could do in this session is to introduce each model, and maybe I should start with you, Alejandra, because I think you want to tell us more about the model of Dromómanos, which was with a lot of partnership and has been working. So you're based in Mexico. And also, you're covering all Latin America. You're doing very in-depth investigation. And maybe we can start with you, so you can explain your model. Maybe that would be the best way to do.
Right. Thank you, Carine, and thank you, everyone, for being here, and my colleagues for sharing this talk. Oh, let me go back. OK. So first, I'm going to explain to you what's the meaning of Dromómanos, because it's a weird word even in Spanish. It's a mental illness of people that can't stay in just one place and have to move all the time. So we translate it romantically as something as addicted to travel, because Dromómanos' spirit is movement and travel. That's why our slogan is "Borders exist to be crossed," and we do. All that we do is journalism, but for telling stories, we also do consulting, education, and events. And I'm going to explain to you every of this. Well, now we are a media company that tells the stories from Latin America through investigations, workshops, consulting, and we also have a festival in Mexico City that's called Dromofest. And how we work and our business model is based in regional investigations, but we also do storytelling, digital strategy, impact campaigns for NGOs and academia, or people who want to have good content and good causes but doesn't know how to communicate. We also do training for journalists and communicators because we want to improve journalism in Spanish, and also events that synthesize knowledge and set an agenda. Our idea is to have better informed communities that take better decisions. So this is how we started. Me and my partner and founder, José Luis Pardo, we traveled Latin America in 2011 in an old car for 2 years, reporting drug trafficking and how does drug trafficking affects the region. And it ended up in a book, Narco America. But this was like the beginning of what we wanted to do, always long-form journalism, because these kind of topics like drug trafficking or violence or authoritarianism are always topics that causes a lot of polarization and misinformation, and we believe that long-form stories help people to understand better this kind of phenomena. So now, 13 years later, we are a team of 8 people that we are based in Mexico City, but we have collaborators all over the continent, more than 100 the last time that we counted. Also, we have alliances with more than 60 media outlets. We have worked in 20 countries. We have local and international clients. And even, well, later I'm going to explain our audience and how do we work with that. But our point, or what we want to do, as I was telling before, of these kind of topics, we turn these stories in impactful narratives. And we used a lot of things to do that. This is everything for Dromómanos. We start with an agenda, like the blue circle is our agenda, and it's all social issues, like security. I'm sorry, it's not translated, this circle, but well, we are mainly focused on climate change, authoritarianism, drug policy, also indigenous communities, childhood, immigration, and gender, all social topics. This is the agenda that we follow. And then we also, the yellow circle is our method that I'm going to explain afterwards. And our business model is the orange one. So, well, this is the agenda that I told you before. And this is how we work with everything that we do. Everything starts with a topic, for example, drug trafficking. And then we do research on the ground, like very traditional journalism, always in depth, always we can spend months or years doing an investigation. For example, the first project of drug trafficking was 2.5 years. Now we're working in a homicide book that it's going to take more than 6 years because we are trying to explain like these topics that affects all the region and also in a very particular way each country. Then we do like very good content, these long-form stories, but we can also do a podcast or a documentary or just infographics, you know, like after the investigation, we think how it's the better way, form to be shown to the public. And when it's a story, when it has become a story now, then we think in the amplification and alliances to make it live longer. For example, we do a digital strategy, but we also have an event or a workshop so the story can continue living, and maybe we do alliances with academics that they can continue investigating the story, and we seek allies that are on the same topics all over. And then it's become a narrative with impact. So this is the business model that we are following. All is journalism based. Like for us, journalism is the most important thing, and it's a circular model with 4 business units. First is Dromómanos, that are editorial products in which we are known across Latin America for our high quality research and storytelling. But then we also have, and I was explaining that to Carine before yesterday. Like, Dromómanos is non-profit, okay? So this is like the core of us, and it's non-profit. But then we have Dromolab, Dromofest, and El Salón that are for-profit. And our idea is that these 3 are gonna maintain the journalism in the future. So with consulting, we spread a specialized knowledge of academia, as I said before, academia or civil society, that they have sometimes a lot of investigation or a lot of knowledge, but they don't know how to communicate or how to take their message. So we help them with websites or with digital strategy or with an impact campaign that implies a lot of different activities. That it can be a photo exhibition, but also a concert and different kind of things to engage people. Then we have Dromofest. I always said that it's not a journalism festival, it's an ideas festival to show society the value of journalism. We want to show how stories are done and to do content in public, like doing interviews with big, oh, I'm sorry, because it's easier if I move the presentation. Well, Dromómanos I already explained. And this is the kind of projects that we have done. Like Collapso is our environmental project that we are working right now. Narcoamérica is the one of drugs that I told you before. Aquí Mando Yo, it was a research of the authoritarian rise in 7 countries in Latin America. Redacción Regional, for example, I think it's one of the most interesting projects that we are working now because we are working with 4 independent media in Central America that are facing a lot of censorship and risk, and also some of our collaborators had been in exile, and we in Mexico City are centering all the efforts of the project, and also we can help them to be safer and to publish in safe conditions. And well, Dromolab, this is what I was saying. Our opportunities to sell service and also give trainings. And this is some of the projects that we have done. For example, a feminicide campaign for Amnesty International, or other things about coal and the need to change energies to safer and cleaner energies in Mexico for Iniciativa Climática. It's an NGO, an environmental NGO. La Mata No Mata was a big thing this year in Colombia. It was a campaign about cannabis legalization. And it was almost voted in the Congress. There were 8 debates, and the first 7 were approved, and the 8 didn't. But the public conversation about the need to change the drug policy in Colombia was amazing. And this is the kind of narratives that we want to change. I'm going to go faster because I don't want to keep everything. So El Salón, that in English would be like the newsroom. We want to produce and create knowledge and connect a network of communicators, and we are about to launch a subscription model and selling courses and workshops. These are some of the things that we have done online and offline. There are all kind of workshops of documentary, like all non-fiction ways to tell stories. And finally, Dromofest, that is our festival that I was saying before. That we want to amplify our work and reach other audiences, and also there's an opportunity with sponsorships and ticket sales. This is, for example, last year, John Lee Anderson interviewing one of the candidates to the presidential election next year. And we do different kind of activities in the festival, like workshops, conversations, but also party, and we always have fun. So, this is like the way the agenda, the business model, and work together. And our mission is to cross Latin America and tell the stories that inform and move Latin Americans, but we also want to be the center of a new collaborative, quality, and sustainable independent Latin American journalism to create better informed communities that are active in decision-making in the most violent and unequal place in the region. And because one of the things that we are trying to prove with all the things that I've said before is that long-form content, like this content that we love and that we enjoy doing and producing, can be also sustainable and can have an income, and that income can let us be free and independent and continue doing journalism. So this is everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alejandra. Maybe, Siddharth, we can go through the wire models. I think it is very special too, with being non-profit and relying on donation mostly. So if you can tell us a bit more about it.
Thank you very much. I spoke a little bit yesterday about the threats and challenges that we face in the media in India. And today I would like to specifically talk about the work that we're doing at The Wire. We founded The Wire as a non-profit media organization in 2015. The Wire is perhaps one of the only mainstream non-profit entities in the media space. And by mainstream, I mean we are not a niche news organization. We don't focus, say, only on the environment or only on human rights. One topic. We are, in a way, a full spectrum news organization. We cover all important national and international events. We don't do crime, we don't do sport, but short of that, everything else is fair game. We are a relatively small organization. As of today, the total number of journalists who work at The Wire across 3 different languages. We publish mainly in English. That's our most important platform. But we also publish in Hindi and in Urdu. So these are two other important Indian languages in North India. And our total, the journalists that we have are around 40. So with 40 people, we are coming out in 3 languages, and we also have a very active and vibrant video section. So we have a YouTube channel, which has around 4.8 million subscribers, and we do anywhere from 15 million to 25 million views every month. And what we have been able to demonstrate is, in a short span of time, seven and a half years, with resources that are really much less than what all regular big news organizations have at their command. We have shown that it is possible to do great journalism. It is possible to capture the imagination and attention of the wider public and become an important part of the Indian media landscape. So today, if you speak to politicians, if you speak to kids on campus, if you speak to people in the trade unions, in different social movements, in politics, farm workers, and you talk to them about the media landscape, they all are aware of the work that we do, which we consider to be a very, very big victory on our part, given that we have had hardly any resources. On an annual basis, our budget is around, in dollar terms, around, I would say, $700,000 or $800,000. And we raise the bulk of that, 80% of that, from donations. We were fortunate in the initial period to have some philanthropic support from within the country, but it's the nature of life in India, as I described yesterday. When you have enormous government pressure on independent media. So while we have remained unscathed, and it's impossible for the government to put pressure on us, but they have created a situation where philanthropy of the kind that we would need to take us to the next level is not available. Philanthropists, so anybody with money who is inclined to support us at a certain level feels a little bit intimidated, feels a little bit under pressure, because you obviously don't want to attract the attention of the authorities by making a donation that is large. So we have found that small is beautiful. In any given year, anywhere from 20 to 30,000 people donate amounts, small and large, to The Wire. And actually, if you ask me what's the secret of The Wire's ability to succeed and thrive and protect itself from pressure, it's the fact that we have such a diverse source of funding. It would be great to have philanthropists, but if philanthropists are going to face the heat and leave, then it's much better to be dependent on this large universe of ordinary citizens. Under Indian law, if you're a non-profit, especially in the media space, all your donations have to come from Indian citizens or Indian entities. An Indian passport holder living in Greece can contribute, but an Indian in America who has a US passport is not allowed to donate. So this is a constraint for us, but within that constraint, as I said, we have managed, and 80% of our revenue comes from donations, and the remaining 20% comes mainly in the form of programmatic advertising, the kind of ads on YouTube and Google. Unlike Mediapart, which has no advertising, we allow advertising to play a small role in our revenue portfolio, 20%. And we don't feel constrained, we don't feel that this is a threat, simply because there is no one advertiser, there is no one company that is sponsoring or advertising in The Wire and who would then come under pressure, and that pressure would become a point of pressure on us. So this is the way that we have kept ourselves viable. Of course, the challenge that we face, and that's what I'd like to end on, is how do you, I'm not speaking about the political, legal challenges which I spoke about yesterday, but the challenge that we face on the financial front is how do we go from a certain level at which we are today, where we produce, say, around 30 or 40 pieces of journalism every day. How do we go to a situation where we are doing 50% more or 60% more? Obviously, we need more reporters. We need more editors. To do that, I'm quite confident that the journalism they produce, by reaching a wider audience, will also trigger a higher level of donations. But the problem is, how do you get from where you are today to a situation 3 years from now? Because if you hire more reporters and editors today, then you have to start paying immediately, whereas the payoff comes after 3 or 4 years. And this is the challenge that we, frankly, don't know how to deal with, because in an ordinary world, you would have some measure of philanthropic support that could help you bridge that gap. But as I said, for a variety of reasons, that's not possible. So we are looking at possible measures like events as a means of fundraising. We had an event in Bangalore recently with a local actor known for taking political stances, and we sold tickets. It's very rare to have events in India where tickets are sold. I mean, non-entertainment events where tickets are sold. We've shown that that's possible, and that our community of readers and viewers is quite happy to come out and pay to attend an event that we organize. So events is one important avenue that we're going to explore. The second is to create the Wire, I should have mentioned, is free to read, so there's no paywall. But can we create niche products that are premium, that are paywalled? And we are experimenting with a newsletter called the India Cable, which is a subscription-driven product. And we've had very good initial response. So we will probably do a little bit more of that as a means of generating additional revenue. But for us, that challenge remains of how do you go from a steady state equilibrium where we are viable in perpetuity at the current level of activity. How do you go from here to a higher flight path? And that's the challenge that we are trying to deal with right now. Thank you.
So as you understand, we're all trying to look for independent in our economy to make sure that we're going to publish stories that are totally independent from any interferences in terms of politics or economics. And now, I think, Konstantinos, you should tell us a bit more about the project, which is also only belongs to its readers, mainly, not as Mediapart through subscription, but through donation mainly. So can you tell us more about it?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation. It's a group of very distinguished media outlets, even a bit intimidating, to be honest, for me. I'm very happy to speak about our business model because it's something we really take pride in. And of course, you'd expect a journalist to take pride in the actual work that's published. But we all have come to realize that you can't do one without the other, that what you can publish relies entirely on who pays for the news. So there's plenty of good intentions and talented journalists in the world, but then the question becomes, who's willing to pay for these stories to come out? Obviously, the people would want to pay, but this is easier said than done. What do? We try to give voice to the underprivileged, to migrants, union workers, victims of sexual abuse, of police brutality, stories in general that are not very welcome in mainstream media. I myself started as an opinion columnist in the Press Project from the start, and then I presented a late-night show, a political comedy sort of show, and then the original founder and owner of the Press Project, who's a very dear friend of mine, who was my closest friend, passed away. And then I became the editor-in-chief. And what happened is that, thanks to his marketing genius, he managed to convince a significant part of the Greek audience in the left, that, as he used to say, unless you pay for your news, somebody else is going to pay. And if that's an oligarch, he obviously won't have your best interests dear to his heart. And this is something we all know, but it was very hard to put across as a message, and especially 12 years ago. That was before Netflix. That was before people were in the habit of paying in the internet. It was at a time where people were very... They thought that everything here, everything on the internet should be for free. And then eventually people started realizing what that means for the news. So it was very astonishing that even though the original reaction was that you're a beggar, you're always begging for money, and people would scorn at him because that was the time, then he eventually, before his death, and in fact, just a few months before his death, he managed to build a platform of a dedicated community of people who would follow, support, and pay for this kind of journalism. And since the impact is easily quantifiable these days, I dare say that we're doing okay. Not The Wire or Mediapart, okay, but it really is worth our effort. So what we do is that we rely entirely on regular, small donations. What does that mean? It means that we don't take money from advertising. Why do we do that? In principle, we don't block any sort of advertising. We just say no to money that comes from banks, from big corporations, and from the state. In this disguised type of funding, which is will give you 500,000 euros so that you can tell people to brush their teeth before they go to bed, which is a form of, it's a vehicle of corruption that's very well known. So once you block out these three types of advertisers, then there's really nothing left of importance. So there's nothing to expect once you've blocked out these three media, these three advertisers. So we rely only on our readers. There's no firewall. Our content is open to the public, and that's been very hard to explain to my accountant, because in the beginning, when we first started, I was trying to explain the business model. He would say, so why do people pay if that's already out there? And it was a time where you would have to go into in fact, they do. Apparently, they want us to stay alive. They want us to keep doing that. And even though this now sounds very reasonable, it did not sound reasonable at all when this media outlet started. But that's how it works. Because we do care a lot about the impact of our stories. They're always open to the public, and people apparently do want to keep paying for something which is already open and accessible to the public. So our business model is based on on just some simple human values, like the trust that you put in a media and the trust that you put on specific people, that you believe that they actually think that they speak their mind and there's not some hidden agenda in what they're saying. And it just so happens that this has become a very rare quality in journalism these days, especially in mainstream journalism, and that's why we really take pride in doing our job in this way. Thank you very much.
Maybe I can ask you, how do you make sure that your model will be sustainable in the future? Siddharth, you already responded a bit on that, but I don't know if you want to add, or Alejandra, because I think that's really the purpose of our panel today, to see also in the future, because if it's, it's good that we are here now, and still we want to be there in 2 years, in 3 years, in 10 years, and forever, if possible. So, what would you do to make sure that you're going to be profitable or sustainable in the next years?
I go first. Okay. Well, in our case, I think it's very difficult to be sure about anything, but we have good results until now. At the beginning, we were mainly funded by philanthropical organizations, and in the last year, our self-generated income increased 25%. So this year it's going to be about 40%. So if we continue following that trend, we believe that we can continue working with this model, and because this business model, we started running it 2 years ago. So now we are starting to see the results and to grow as an organization, and we think we have a lot of possibilities to succeed because we are also adapting to what's happening. In Latin America, a lot of funding has been shortened too, like philanthropical funding, and so we have to generate ourselves, money for ourselves. Yesterday, Siddharth told in his talk that to have a business model was also a way to protect freedom of speech, and to protect journalists, and we believe that, so that's why we are exploring these ways to try new income. And also, what I love about Dromómanos is that we are very flexible. We experiment. We are seeing what is happening, what is going good in the environment, in the media environment, and we try to apply it. So we can. We don't want to be in a subscription model for our content because we want more people to read this kind of content. But we are thinking in membership for education and courses. And what we are trying to do is produce content to produce money. So that's what we are doing, and we believe that as we continue producing content, we can have money.
For us, the challenge is ensuring sustainability in an environment of repression. So it's much more than the usual challenge that media confronts around the world. Of course, in many countries, repression is today a fact of life. There is a specific challenge, and the challenge is twofold. Sustainability of your finances and sustainability of your outreach. How do you sustain your inflow of money so that you can produce journalism? And how do you sustain your ability to reach audiences? Because both can and will be under attack. And our answer to the first part is to, as I said, to broad base. The larger the universe of donors, the smaller the ticket size of each individual donation, the harder it becomes for repression to choke off funding. They can still try to do it, but the more variation you have, the greater the number of people who are giving. That, I think, is the future. And we are working on a strategy to do that, and it has to do a little bit, I mentioned yesterday, the importance of physical contact with the universe of readers. So is it possible, for example, to create wire communities in 100 cities in India, where, or wire ambassadors in 20 cities abroad, where you have a large Indian diaspora comprising people who are still Indian citizens? I think it is entirely possible. And that then becomes the focal point for continuous and sustained outreach and fund collection. On the dissemination side, as I said yesterday, you cannot be overly dependent on social media as a means of disseminating information. Social media was a great leveling of the playing field. It allowed us to reach audiences with no money compared to the largest newspapers and TV channels. But repression means that the authorities have a way of ensuring that you can no longer access social media as a means of dissemination. So direct contact with readers and viewers. We need to think, if you're in the video news business, can you imagine a life where you have been blocked from YouTube? And should you start planning for that kind of life? Maybe you should. Because we know that in India, for example, the government has leaned on YouTube to get, like, they got the BBC's documentary deleted, they've got other content deleted under one guise or the other, either saying there's a copyright violation or saying that there is a threat to national security. A lot of independent news producers on YouTube in India who use parliamentary footage as a means of critiquing government policy. So you play a bite of a minister speaking in parliament, taken from the public broadcaster. You have copyright notices being sent by the public broadcaster to those independent news channels because they are being critical, right? So you need to guard against that, and that also has to be part of the sustainability model.
As for you, Konstantinos.
Even though, as a person, I'm not an optimist at all, I dare say that this is not a fragile model because it relies on small donations. It comes from the future. We're confident that next year and then the year after that, we will still be there, we'll stick around. The problem is that our development, our growth is it's painfully slow. So there's two things that we're not doing well at the moment, and that the first is growth, and the other is supporting slow journalism, because we do the news and we want to keep doing that. We want the Press Project to be part of the daily habits of consuming news for our readers and supporters. And so this is this consumes a huge amount of work hours. And so I would say that these are the two main challenges. Other than that, I don't think we'll die anytime soon as a media outlet. I just hope that this ages well.
Cross fingers. And I was wondering if some of you had, trying to do things to reach a larger audience in terms of youth people, because of course they are the future, and it's very important to talk to them, to write for them, and to make sure that someday they want to read what you're writing. So how do you do in terms of trying to reach these young communities?
Should I start again? Well, in our case, also, we collaborate with a lot of media. So some of the stories, if we think that that it's focused for young audiences, we look for media that are already talking to those audiences, like Vice or AJ Plus or this kind of younger media, younger focused media. And also because we do really long stories, about 25,000 characters or more. And our public, because the people that Dromómanos talk to are other journalists, academia, like very decision makers, politicians, like those kind of people are our main audience. But we believe that with continue doing events and those kind of things, we can also attract younger audiences, and that we can do, in social media, we try to do very likable and very well-designed things, because also for us, the aesthetics are very important, so that's the way people get engaged with your content, right? So we are trying to do those kind of things to engage younger audiences, but we also know that our main audience are not them. We talk to decision makers, and they can spread the word of what we're doing.
So, look, India is a very young country, and I'm happy to report that the Wire audience is a young audience, actually. So, when we look at, I'm not sure how reliable this data is on Google or YouTube or whatever, but when we do look at the analytical data, young people, ages 16 and up, 16 to 25, 25 to 34, occupy a very large and important part of our audience. And I think this may be unique to India in some way, but there is an appetite for the kind of content that we're generating. Of course, you have to go where the young people are. You have to give news to them in the format that they are used to. And Instagram, for example, is growing at a very rapid pace in India. TikTok is banned, but Instagram and YouTube Shorts, these are very, very important, fast-growing mediums, and we are producing content. It's a different matter that in Instagram, it's next to impossible to monetize that content. At least we haven't figured out how you can do it. So even though we have, I think, 1.3 million Instagram followers and a very heavy engagement with all of our posts. But it's very hard to see how, other than just informing readers, how to turn that into something that would help the viability of the business side.
Konstantinos, yeah.
A very famous radio producer was in a panel with me. He was talking about what happened in the Greek radio and why don't young people listen to the radio. And he said that when individual broadcast companies started in Greece, 80% of the people working there and presenting shows were under the age of 25. And they're still the same people presenting radio shows today. So part of the answer is you have to be able to let young people engage and speak for themselves and write and hire them in some cases. And it's not as easy as, normally people would say just go to TikTok. You can do a TikTok dance on the new tax reform. And obviously sometimes you can't do that. So what we do a lot, we produce a lot of video content, and that's something which appeals to younger generations. But I think that part of the answer is engaging with these very same people as such and with what they are willing to discuss.
Okay, thank you, all of us. I think we don't have time for a question, but as before, we are all here behind the scenes, so you can get to us and ask all the questions you want. We'll be there and ready to answer to your question.